In 1994, DC Comics released Green Lantern number 54. The issue depicts the big bad, Major Force, strangling the Green Lantern's girlfriend, Alex DeWitt, to death. When our hero comes home, he finds a note on the counter that reads, "Surprise for you in the fridge, love A." He opens the fridge and finds that Major Force has stuffed his girlfriend in the refrigerator. This produces a lot of anguish from the Green Lantern, which is a natural reaction to seeing the corpse of your significant other in the refrigerator, I would imagine. Gail Simone, an American comic book writer, reader, and current queen of Twitter hot takes, read the comic and began to see a pattern when it came to beloved female characters in comic books. It seemed to her that they were getting disproportionately attacked and killed compared to their male counterparts. She came up with a list aptly titled Women in Refrigerators in 1999. The site dedicated to the list is still up to date in all of its late 90s glory. If you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description. On the site, Simone explains what the list is and what its purpose is. These are superheroines who have been either devoured, raped, or cut up and stuck in the refrigerator. Some have been revived, even improved, although the question remains as to why they were thrown in the wood chipper in the first place. The Women in Refrigerators trope, aka fridging, was originally concentrated on female characters in comic books, but it has since been popularized and used to describe female characters in all forms of media. Down to its bare bones, fridging is the death, depowerment, or severe harm of a female character as a means of advancing a male character's development or producing an emotional reaction out of a male character. Let's look at some examples of female character deaths that would be considered fridging. Since my knowledge of comics is severely lacking, all of these examples are from film, most of them from sci-fi and fantasy films. If you want to see a comprehensive list of fridging specifically in the comic world, again, I implore you to check out Simone's website. One of the most tragic instances of fridging in the last couple years has been Gamora's death in Avengers: Infinity War. In the movie, the character of Thanos, who's both the villain and essentially the main character of the story, is on a quest to find all of the Infinity Stones. This quest brings him to Vormir with his daughter/adversary Gamora so he can acquire the Soul Stone. They meet an exiled Red Skull who tells them that the only way to acquire the Soul Stone is to sacrifice something that you love. Since it's been established that Gamora is pretty much the only thing that he loves, he ends up throwing her off a cliff and acquiring the Soul Stone. Obviously, this is framed as a big dramatic moment, and I guess the point was for us to feel bad for Thanos by CGIing tears on his big purple face.
Look, she's crying. Do you hear her crying? Like we care. I don't give a...
Her death is also utilized as Thanos' no turning back moment and as a way to display how much he's willing to sacrifice in order to accomplish his messed up goals, even his own daughter. It's also used as a reason for Star-Lord, her love interest and fellow Guardian of the Galaxy, to punch Thanos and sabotage the plan when they were this close to getting the Infinity Gauntlet. Another example of fridging in recent years is the less well-known character of Darlene in Baby Driver, directed by Edgar Wright. Played by Mexican actress Eiza Gonzalez, she's one of the few female characters in this movie and the only woman of color. I was originally going to revolve this whole video around Baby Driver, but then this came out, and I realized that maybe the film's penchant for fridging is the least of its problems. But I digress. The character of Darlene's main purpose, besides being a gun-slinging criminal, is to be the thing the character of Buddy, played by John Hamm, strives to protect and possess at all costs. She ends up getting killed in a shooting spree, which propels Buddy into a quest for revenge against the main character of Baby, who he blames for her death. This endeavor proves to be fatal as he is eventually killed by Baby in the movie's climax. The final example we'll be looking at, class, is Padme Amidala's death in Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith, because I have to mention Star Wars at least once in all of my videos. As much as I love this franchise, I have to admit that it pulls this shit a lot. I'm only highlighting Padme's death because it's the most frustrating to me personally. Although almost everyone agrees that this is the best movie in the prequel trilogy, this is arguably Padme Amidala's weakest characterization. Her place in this story is to essentially be a pregnant human MacGuffin. Anakin is set on saving Padme from death after he sees her come to her demise in a vision. The fear of loss this distills in him results in his fall to the dark side, and instead of saving his pregnant wife, he ends up betraying her and force choking her. Padme ends up going into labor and delivering baby Luke and Leia, but she dies of a broken heart. Palpatine, who facilitated Anakin's fall to the dark side, lies to him and says that,
"In your anger, you killed her."
And he yells, Now, your reaction to fridging could be a simple, so what? Characters need to be harmed and or die sometimes, and it should have some relevance to the plot and the characters, or else it's just bad writing. And that's true, you're right, but it's also a little more complicated than that. It has to do with the frequency in which female characters are fridged, their characterization and relevance to the story before they're fridged, and the way in which they are fridged. A lot of what makes this trope problematic has to do with how frequently it happens. Yes, there are Obi-Wans and Bucky Barneses and Lokis and John Winchesters and Han Solos, but for every one Dr. Abraham Erskine, there's about 20 Gwen Stacys. On Simone's website, she says, an important point, this isn't about assessing blame about an individual story or the treatment of an individual character, and it's certainly not about personal attacks on the creators who kindly shared their thoughts on this phenomenon. It's about the trend, its meaning, and its relevance, if any. If you look at this from a social perspective, it makes sense that it would be dangerous to exist as a woman in fiction, because it's dangerous to exist as a woman in real life. The film and entertainment industry doesn't exist in some sort of societal vacuum. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It feeds off of, reflects, and is a part of the current system. And the current system happens to value white, straight, cisgender male life over everybody else's. Due to that same system, adequate female representation is often harder to find than male representation. In UCLA's annual report on diversity in Hollywood, they released a chart displaying the count of film actors featured in 2019's top movies, organized by race and gender. White women came in with 299 compared to 463 white men, while women of color fared much worse, with 64 black women, 21 Latinx women, 25 Asian women, 44 multiracial women, 0 Native women, and 3 Middle Eastern and North African women. Because women are already underrepresented in media, it's much more significant when a female character dies because we only have so many. In contrast, when a male character dies, specifically a white male cisgender straight character, it barely makes a ripple. Additionally, it's important to look at the way fridged women are often written. Many of them suffer from what I like to call Lady MacGuffin syndrome. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a MacGuffin is an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself. Think the Ring in Lord of the Rings or the Tesseract in the Avengers. Like a MacGuffin, many of these women are more or less relevant only in their connection to the plot and their attachment to male characters. Gamora within the confines of Infinity War is something to be thrown away in the pursuit of Thanos' power, regardless of whether or not he has some sort of emotional attachment to her. Padme is something that Anakin has to save from death. Darlene is an object of sexual desire that Buddy feels a sense of possession over. Oftentimes, too, female characters are seen as the emotional support. They are often the girlfriend, the wife, or the mother, and they provide a sense of security and exist solely to nurture the male character. So it is very easy to create conflict and drama by removing that safety net and harming/killing off the things that he holds dear and the things that make him comfortable. Another important distinction is to clarify how female characters die as opposed to how male characters die. There's exceptions, of course, but oftentimes when men die in media, there's a certain heroicism behind it. You can see this, for example, in Avengers Endgame. When Iron Man dies, he's sacrificing himself for all of humanity. It's heroic, emotional, and even though he's going to die, it feels like he has the power in the situation. It's a meaningful and fitting end to his arc as a character. To draw back on a prior example, let's look at the death of Gamora again. She fights against her own death, and she's framed as being a helpless victim and collateral damage of her father's actions. This may sound counterintuitive, but I think there's ways to fridge a female character that are respectful and fitting to their narrative. And yes, I'm going to talk about Star Wars again. In Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Admiral Holdo sacrifices herself by flying her ship into the Supremacy and splitting it in half. It's one of the most powerful visual moments in the movie, and one of the few actual wins the good guys get in the whole film. But you could argue that this is fridging. It propels Poe Dameron's arc, and it helps him learn his lesson about trusting leadership and being a leader himself. Like Iron Man's death, though, it doesn't feel like they're throwing her away mid-arc for shock factor, or so other characters have something to react to. It propels the plot, it's meaningful, and it makes sense for her character. It feels more like a power move than a tragedy. No way am I trying to say that you should never ever kill your female characters ever because #feminism. You have to kill your darlings, and sometimes those darlings are female. What I am trying to say is that you have to be thoughtful and conscious when you make your stuff. You are personally responsible in making sure that whatever you create isn't harmful and doesn't perpetuate negative tropes and stereotypes. Before you fridge your female characters, ask yourself, am I playing into harmful patterns by harming and or killing off this character? Is this a major loss of representation in my story? Is it meaningful and fitting? And most importantly, is this necessary? To all the creators out there, you have the power to invent something new, to take characters places that don't depend on tired conventions. There's so many directions you can take your female characters besides killing them off, and there's so many ways you can challenge your male characters besides killing off their girlfriends and wives and mothers. You'll find that sometimes you don't have to chop her up and stuff her in the refrigerator. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, feel free to leave a like and hit the subscribe button, and follow me on all my other social stuff. I'm KYBER.punk on Instagram and KYBERPUNK on Letterboxd. And if you have any comments or thoughts or things you would like to see from this channel, feel free to leave a comment down below.